Care Sandwich podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our next guest. Her name is Michelle, and I'm just going to let this video run that's going to give you a bit of info on our podcast, and then we're going to jump right in.
Welcome to Care Sandwich, the podcast where we dive into the success journeys of law firm owners across the country. I'm Margarita Eberline, your host and the founder of Marketing Boss, a fractional chief marketing officer firm for law firms. On this show, we'll explore the challenges, strategies, and victories that have shaped law firms and how they wrap every interaction with care. Because we believe that caring isn't just a value, it's a strategy for success. So grab your favorite sandwich, sit back, and let's dig into a conversation filled with insight, inspiration, and of course, a lot of care.
So hello, let's introduce our guest, Michelle Sanchez. I'm so excited to hear some more about you. So let's kick this off. Tell us a bit about your background and kind of what you do.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. First of all, I really appreciate it. My name again, Michelle Michi Sanchez, and I'm a Georgia community organizer of over 10 years. I've spent the last 10 years organizing communities across Georgia to empower them to learn how to, stand up for their rights and organize around the issues facing their communities so that we can build power among mostly underserved and underrepresented communities in Georgia. And I am running for Georgia Labor Commissioner because I'm basically tired of seeing employers take advantage of workers in Georgia. I know we've all heard it said that Georgia is the number one place to do business, but after 10 years of organizing in Georgia, I know what that really means, and that's that Georgia's the number one state for big businesses to come and take advantage of workers. Right now, we're facing rising costs, stagnant wages, and insufficient enforcement of workforce protections. And so I'm running because I believe this office must actively defend working families. I've spent the last 10 years.
Amazing. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've spent, the last 10 years organizing with different groups like the Democratic Party of Georgia, GALEO, which stands for the Georgia Association of Latino Elected Officials, Progressive Turnout Project, New Georgia Project, the Georgia Latino Association for Human Rights, Casa in Action, and Common Cause.
Oh my gosh. So do you have like a personal story of what made you decide to run? I know you just listed your background, and I'm guessing with all your background, you were like, it's time for a change. But do you have anything that was personally driving you? Anything that you could...
So actually, I do. And it's interesting to me just because, I was inspired to become an organizer when I learned of the Bernie Sanders campaign back in 2015. In his campaign, I saw somebody who had stood on the right side of history on a lot of the issues that I cared about and had not heard anybody speak on up until that point. And so I honestly felt like it was my personal prayer being answered, because when I voted for Obama's reelection, I was like, please let this be the last time I have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Let there be a candidate of and for the people. And so when I learned about him in 2015, and then he announced his candidacy for president, the literally next day, I was like, okay, well, I have to put my faith into action. And so that's why I signed up to volunteer. Back then, Georgia was not viewed as a battleground state, so the campaign didn't come for a whole year. But I decided to see how else I could help. There was a grassroots group forming, and that's how my journey into politics began. And so in following his message of getting involved locally, I joined my local Hall County Democrats. They asked me to run for office, which I felt, I was being led to do. So I ran for state house here in Hall County in 2016. Discovered that I did not like that part of it, but I did like seeking justice. And so that's why I continued to do work behind the scenes through the nonprofit space. But after so many years of doing that, I there comes a point where the work almost feels a little bit futile at
Mhm.
times. And then especially with this new administration coming in and trying to gut, all the nonprofits, I decided it was time for me to step back. And so I actually took a job with an attorney as their paralegal. But he forced me to register a business so that he could misclassify me and dodge paying taxes, and accountability when he would later sexually harass me and steal my wages. And so it was through that experience that I learned that there really aren't any protections, in Georgia, or there are very few protections. And so for the sexual harassment, there's absolutely none in Georgia. The only way that to find some kind of accountability is if the employer has 15 or more employees, and that triggers the federal, um, statute. And so I had that experience. And then 2 years prior to that, my oldest daughter, Haley, she was excited. She wanted to open a cat cafe, and she had gotten a job as a barista at a local cafe, but then they flaked on her. And
Mhm.
so she entered a, depressive episode and sadly took her life about a week later. And this was 2 months before she turned 20. And so I just, after those 2 experiences, and, um, I just it was the day before Thanksgiving, and I was doing my Bible study, and I just felt it pressed on my heart that I was supposed to run for office, to do something about all the things that are facing our communities. And honestly, at that time, I thought I was supposed to run for Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat because she had just announced that she was going to resign due to the death threat she was receiving for having stood up with the Epstein victims. And so I even, made steps towards that. I built a website, I signed up with the FEC, but then as God tends to do when once you step into obedience, he'll put obstacles in your way to challenge you and see if you are going to stick with it. And so I ended up having to move, um, twice within 1 month, and I ended up here in Gainesville, back where this all started, when I ran for office in the beginning. And so in moving here, I had to determine what I was going to do. And so that's when I was presented with, the Labor Commission. And I really had to learn more about it, what it actually does. And I realized that it fits perfectly with the experience that I had just gone through. And so I bring that firsthand experience with the wage theft and the worker misclassification and those systemic gaps in accountability, along with my years of coalition building across North Georgia and, that's rural and urban Georgia. And I feel like, this is a huge opportunity for us to put somebody into this seat that understands firsthand, the issues that, a lot of Georgia workers face, but then also how to organize communities and build coalitions across the state. And it's a really important time right now because with everything going on, of course, and we are in a midterm election year, and I feel like it is it's a perfect opportunity to, flip the state and make some real positive change happen for our communities.
Oh my gosh. So, first of all, that's such a moving story. Thank you for sharing that with me. Very sorry for your loss, but also that's kind of what we need in people who are running for government is people who have that firsthand experience and actually know what it's like to be in that seat. That way you can speak up for those who may not know that they're in a vulnerable position. Um, and so, kind of on that, I know that wage theft is such a huge policy point for you. Can you kind of help our viewers know what is wage theft? Like how small could wage theft be to how big can it be? And like, what kind of future do you envision yourself, helping advocate for wage theft? How do you want to improve theft?
Yeah, absolutely. So wage theft can come in many different forms, from, not paying people overtime or having them work before they clock in or beyond when they've clocked out, to outright not paying them. And we know that this happens a lot in, the most vulnerable of communities, like people that work in construction industries or hospitality industries. You regularly hear of these people just not getting paid at all because a lot of people feel like they can't do anything about it. And so, what I envision, once I take this office is to, actually go after those bad actor employers and make sure that, it's done in a public way. So having some kind of like registry where we are tracking who are these violators and the fines that they're going to have to be paying so that we know who the good employers in the state are and who we should be looking out for. Um, and so that's the first thing on wage theft that I would like to do.
Yeah, and it's so important, especially when you're relying on this job. You have this family that's like relying on you. You're so afraid to say no to your employer, and it might just be a small transgression, but it does build up over time. So I love that you have this plan to basically put more protections into place so that it can't be just like a little wage theft or just a lot of wage theft. Like we want to make sure that people can actually be held accountable. So love that. Um, so, pivoting a little bit, since we are a podcast that kind of focuses around law firms and attorneys as well, why should attorneys and law firm leaders pay attention to this race? Like, I know you have a background as a paralegal, you have your personal story, but maybe there's some more reasons that we should be tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think for attorneys, this helps because when you have a labor commission that is actively, tracking these things, that helps to build cases for people when they do decide to seek, legal help. You have you have the backing of the labor commission who can provide you with, the data, and then you can also see if, this person who you're going up against has a pattern of these types of offenses. And I think that really matters when you're trying to build a case and show that this is not just a one-time thing. And so the enforcement of the labor commission can definitely strengthen the cases that attorneys are building. And then this is a statewide race. So, part of what I want to do in this seat is make sure that workers across the state know what their rights are. And I want to do that, in both English and Spanish, and honestly, all of the languages that people speak if possible. So, I think more educated and a more educated on their rights workforce equals more cases potentially for attorneys because they're going to know when their rights have been violated and that they do have the right to seek help.
Yeah, exactly. And that totally makes sense when you have more documentation, you have a stronger case, and when you have that knowledge, I mean, there are a lot of people who know, a lot of workers who know their rights around like a slip and fall at work, right? But do you know your rights around wage theft? Probably not as much. It might just be like, might think, okay, it's just $30 paycheck. Okay, it's now just a $200 paycheck, but I can't afford it. So it's great to have this documentation. I do think that is going to be really helpful for law firm leaders as well as the workers who are seeking to get compensation. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I want to know, how can folks support you? Do you have a website? Do you have any campaigns coming or any, talks coming up or anything? Like tell us all about it.
Yeah, so we actually just officially launched yesterday. Our press release went out yesterday, and so you can find the stories so far. The Gainesville Times has posted about it, and Telemundo Atlanta. And we will be having events across the state. And the website where you can find, more information on our platform is michi4georgia.com. So that's MICHI, the number 4GA.com. And you can find all the info there, including where you can make a donation. And that's going to be like the biggest way that people can help right now, because unfortunately, just running for office, like this whole process is so expensive. And we're running a grassroots campaign. So there's no corporate PACs or, big donors like, you might have on the other side. But yeah, just to make it onto the ballot is $3,600. And so I am fundraising right now, and qualifying is next week. That's what they call qualifying. You're qualified if you have the money. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so as if people can help with helping us to make it past qualifying, the next step would be making sure to pick a Democratic ballot in May and finding us and voting for us in May, and then that'll push us into November.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love everything that you stand for. Your website looks amazing. So,
Yeah.
everybody, please check out her website and stay tuned. Of course, qualifying is happening next week. But yeah, no, I am so grateful that I got to interview you today. And I have one last question for you. What is your favorite sandwich?
I've been thinking about that, and I really think I'm gonna have to go with like a ham and cheese torta. Like,
That's
no,
a good one.
yeah, they're delicious. Ham and cheese or steak, like tortas in general are delicious. But so
I love
yeah.
a torta. I love a torta. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Please vote. Stay tuned to see what Michelle is up to. And thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you. And actually, I did have one last ask. I I would love to connect with labor attorneys because I want to hear people who are working with people who are going through these things so I can have a better understanding of how, we can help once we take office.
Amazing. So if you're listening, please, labor attorneys, we need some insight, some personal stories here. Anyways,
Awesome.
thank you so much, Michelle. It was
Thank
great to
you.
meet you.
You too. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. All right, now we'll have our outro video.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Care Sandwich. Remember, the way we care for our clients, our teams, and ourselves can make all